Hey everybody, welcome back to another video here on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel. Now listen, we all know what this week is. We know it's a big rivalry matchup. We know what's at stake. And I thought it was important to get an understanding of the other side, but not so much the Collingwood side, but more so the coaching side, the inner sanctum of a footy club, and what goes into playing this game at the highest level, what goes into coaching this game at the highest level, and maybe there's a thing or two we can learn. So I've gone and gotten a man who, I think the GOAT conversation comes up here and there in different circles, whether it's the NBA, the NFL. I think I can safely say this man is the GOAT of the Collingwood Football Club. I've got Nathan Buckley with me. Bucks, welcome to the Blue Abroad YouTube channel.
G'day, Terry. How are you, mate?
Mate, I'm nervous, but I'm excited.
I did ask you off air. I said, how do you explain getting a person onto a Carlton Football Club podcast, supporters podcast, that's had 30 years at the Collingwood Footy Club? So please explain that to me, mate.
Well, listen, I'm not someone that knows it all. I'm someone that wants to learn as much as possible. And sometimes you need to dive into areas where you might not think you're going to go first and foremost. So I thought, this would be a nice conversation to have, and maybe I'll learn a thing or two. Maybe we'll learn a thing or two in the audience as well.
Well, I hope you don't get cancelled by the Carlton faithful, mate.
We're going to see how it goes. Mate, how is your world? How's the transition? Obviously, you said 30 years playing, coaching. You're now commentating. How's the transition been for you?
Yeah, it's gone all right. I don't miss. You have connections in a football program, in a football club, and the teams evolve both on and off the field, and you have connections there that you don't see those guys day to day, which I do miss. But I've really enjoyed, going into the media. The roles at Fox and SEN have been, they have been really enjoyable. I've probably said yes to putting myself in positions that I've said no to plenty of times in the past. So I'm a little more open-minded to branching out and, looking for experiences, I suppose. So celebrity was one of those. And then, doing best on ground on Fox is well and truly out of the comfort zone initially. And, I'm enjoying all of it.
Yeah. Do you find this side to be what you thought it would be before you retired from, well, not only just playing, but I think once you exited as a coach as well?
My style as a young man and therefore like a young footballer was just to make the most of whatever was happening right now. I didn't really project too far forward. I wanted to be as good as I could be, but I had a pretty strong capacity just to narrow the focus on what needed to be done right now and to do that. So in a quite a naive, single-minded way, I didn't look too far about what was next. I got to my retirement as a player, and I knew that I would do a little bit of media and that would buy me a little bit of time. And it's probably much the same now. I get to the end of coaching and I do a little bit of media to buy me a little bit of time. So, like everyone, I've got a family, there's bills to be paid. You've got to earn money to live, whatever the quality of life or the standard of living that you're used to. And, but then there's actually doing what you're really passionate about. So I really enjoy my media stuff at the moment, but I'm still exploring what I'm really passionate about and making sure that I'm spending, my time, and I'm looking at a 10-year period, the next 10 years, doing things that I'm really passionate about.
No, that's awesome. So look, the crux of this conversation comes about, well, first of all, there's a match this week, which we'll talk about later.
There is.
But I learned something from you a few weeks ago. We had a chat, and obviously me as the supporter, rusted on, you can call me almost, just want to see a premiership, the dream of all of that. And we were talking about outcomes and process, and maybe on this side, as a fan, we look at making finals or winning a premiership as the be all and end all. But on the inside, the focus is a little different. So can you touch on what makes up the focus that's required I guess, first of all, as a player and then a coach, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, well, you get judged on win-loss. There's no doubt about that, and you need to win more if you want to qualify. And then when you qualify, you got to win to get to the pointy end, and then you got to win the last game to win a flag. And that's what we all want. It's what we all want to be a part of. And I think in AFL circles, that's pretty much the only version of success for a team. You know, only one team is successful out of the 18 that begin every season. And we all know that that's not accurate, that there is different levels of success, there's different levels of growth and achievement. So I think internally, you always got that dream about getting to where you want to get to, but the focus is largely around being better than you were yesterday. And it needs to be on growth and development and creating the type of environment that allows that to be maximised in your space. So I speak quite often, with mates of mine or mentors of mine, confidants of mine around this nexus between the win-loss, the absolute demented mentality of winning at all costs versus the reality of needing to develop to get to that point. And what is more important? When all's said and done, what is more important? Do you sacrifice everything to win, but then pay a price in your future, or do you grow organically and hopefully enjoy the process whilst you're on the journey to winning? I think I prefer the latter, but I probably live most of my time in the former. So it's an interesting sort of dichotomy there. And when you're a senior coach, you will get judged on win-loss, but you really are about growth and support and giving people a chance to blossom and to show their wares and to grow as people as much as they can as professionals, as much as they do as professionals. And that's probably not viewed like that from the outside as much as the reality on the inside of a football environment.
What did it take for you to switch from the former to the latter, as you said? I'm assuming, as a young player and you grew into a leader, it was probably all about winning at all costs. So what led to that shift and that understanding?
A couple of things were probably pivotal for me or catalysts for me. One is that the realization that whatever mentality you had wasn't actually getting you what you wanted. Failure is a fairly big motivator over a short period of time or a longer period of time if I keep doing what I'm doing, or if I keep seeing it this way, it's not getting results. So I need to change the way that I go about it, whether it's individually or as a team, or what you're contributing to the team. And the other one is, is probably the potential that it's going to get taken away from you, and you start having a closer look at what you're experiencing and having a little bit more gratitude for it, rather than delaying gratification and waiting. You probably spend a little bit more time smelling the roses and appreciating what you're in. And that was never something that I was great at. And then the other side is validation. When you try something new or you try something different and you get rewards for it, I think we're all, in a very human way, you want to do more of that. You get sold that is the way to go about it. So for me, when I sort of let go a little bit about the winning and losing as much, started having more gratitude for the opportunity, for the space I was in, for the relationships that I shared with people, whether it was as a player or as a coach, and actually was able to slow down and actually enjoy the moments that I was in, rather than projecting to desired outcomes. I enjoyed my experiences in football much more when I was in that zone, which was later in my playing career and later in my coaching career, than I did when I was in the opposite zone, which was, simply focused on flags and performance. And that was early in my playing career and early in my coaching career. So I had fairly polarized experiences. And I know which way I'd go. I mean, it's definitely better to enjoy what you're doing right here, right now. And it actually gives you a better chance of succeeding in the long run anyway.
Interesting. There's so many elements that go into winning a football game, let alone making finals, let alone prelims and premierships and all of that. I'm really fascinated by how many people you have to manage as a coach, and how many different personalities you have to sift between, and how many buttons you need to be aware of what to push. What was that like for you? That understanding, that learning about, not only different people, but a different generation.
Yeah, well, I suppose, most people here will be wondering about Vossi and what his challenge is. And what I would say is that most senior coaches have very different roles depending on the organisation they're a part of and the people around them. As you can imagine, there's different skill sets. I mean, the senior coach is a quite defined role, but how much they're involved in list management, or how much they're involved in welfare, how much they want to get involved in conditioning, strength and conditioning, the medical side of things, even development. Like some senior coaches are hands off and hand that right across to their head of development. We have a director of footy at most clubs, all clubs, and that person is largely the CEO of the football department. But the senior coach is seen as the boss. He's seen as the main man. The reality is that the board employs the CEO employs the director of footy, and the director of footy should employ the senior coach. But very few people would see that way externally. And the reality is that very few people on a board see it that way either. They think that they want to employ the coach, which is actually over the top of the CEO, over the top of the director of footy, which stuffs up your chain of command. And I don't think good organisations work like that. So for me, and I think from my experience, I was under 3 or 4 coaches, had plenty of coaches that came through as assistant coaches, and plenty of directors of footy. I had 5 director of footies in my first 7 years, and finished with Walshy, which was great. My main reports and my main responsibility are to the coaches, the line coaches, 3 line coaches, maybe an opposition coach, and then the development coaches underneath, or the head of development, and then the development coaches underneath. So there might be a coaching panel of 9 or 10 pre-COVID, and maybe 6 or 7 now at most clubs. You speak with the head of conditioning, but he's got autonomy to run that because he's done all of his study, he's done all of his experience, and he's the one that knows how many reps to do, how many Ks to run. But we have an idea of what type of player we want to churn out at the end, what type of mentality we want them to have, because the conditioning part is crucial to create a mentality amongst a team. And you need to be pretty aligned with that guy, but he needs to run that. The development coach needs to run that. The medical guy, the doctor, or the head physio, he needs to run that. So the senior coach is just one of probably a group of 7 or 8 people with a diverse skill sets that come together to try and pull an off-field team together to provide the right environment for the on-field team, which is the playing group. That happens in all different ways, which makes it really hard to measure. And when there's grey area like that from the external side, the only thing that is irrefutable is whether you're winning or losing, which is why the senior coach is generally held to account on that, which is ultimately what he's accountable for. But I think sometimes he gets a disproportionate amount of credit and a disproportionate amount of criticism for the same thing.
Well, we live in a really interesting time. The distribution of media, opinion, conversation has really grown. The platforms have grown. It's spread to anyone. I mean, we're sitting here talking on a YouTube channel. What have you made of the evolution of the way in which the game is consumed?
I'm a bit of a cynic, TD. And to be honest, one of the reasons that I'm not really, that coaching is not on my horizon at the moment is the reality of the environment that we live in. Have a look at Leon Cameron, David Noble, Ben Rutten. They're good coaches. They went through a process and were seen by the heads of an elite competition to be the next best option and the right fit for their organisation. they're very good at what they do, but the perception is that they're hopeless. Some CEOs are very good at what they do, and are seen as hopeless when the on-field team fails, or when it doesn't win, or doesn't meet expectations. So I think that the media has a very important role to play with that, and I think that the baying for blood that occurs is unfortunate. I don't think it's based in reality. And when you don't have the information, you really do rely on the information that's transferred to you through either mainstream media or now the opinions of people that really don't know, but it's their opinion through Twitter and other means. So it's a tough existence. The real challenge of a coach is to win the hearts and minds of your players and your staff and your people. And there are so many things that are taking their hearts and minds, their attention of their hearts and minds from them when things get challenging. That's why you hear coaches talk about four walls and the internal environment, and that needs to be so compelling that it buffers out the noise from outside, and that doesn't always happen. And once it seeps in, it's really difficult to manage.
Interesting. Yeah, I try and always be cognizant of the fact that there's only so much information that I'm aware of, and that we as supporters are aware of. It's really just an educated guess based on what we watch on game day, what we listen to in a press conference, and whatever media gets put out by the club. And it's definitely something.
There's a little piece, Denzel Washington. I remind myself of it often, but I mean, he's an actor, but he seems to be a consumer of knowledge, and I just love the way he transfers his thoughts. But he was getting interviewed at one stage, and he was asked about a bit of scuttlebutt that had happened, and he sort of said, "Oh, that was the thing from a couple of days ago." No. And he goes, "That's the problem. That's the problem that we live in." He goes, "If you don't absorb the media, you're uninformed. But if you do absorb the media, you're misinformed." And then he turned around and he goes, "So you've got a responsibility, haven't you? Like, you've got an important job." But not every media person sees it that way. I'm pretty sure that the needing to be 100% right somewhere in the last 10 or 20 years, that's gone south. And there are journalists with integrity, and there are media people who don't want to deal in scuttlebutt, but want to deal in fact. But there's less and less of them, and we're moving away from that. So it's and we don't, as the absorber of that information, because it happens organically and because it's happened gradually, we're largely unaware of the creative writing and spitballing aspect of the media of the day. We still think it's truth. So it's pause for thought, but it's no good being the subject of it in the negative sense. And I'm massively cynical about it. So I'm trying to lob some grenades from inside, but I am part of the media now, so I've got to deal with that.
Well, you're tasked with making the change, I guess.
Yes, I think greater men or women than me have tried and failed, I think, but I'm happy just to have a crack.
Yeah. Well, look, it's on for young and old on Sunday. This is one of the most exciting times for me as a Carlton supporter because of what I've experienced as a fan. I've been passed down the stories of the great Carlton Football Club from yesteryear, and they sound great, but I've never really experienced it properly. You're someone who's been a part of this, this rivalry for many years. So what do you look back on, whether it be as a player or a coach? What are some of your fondest memories of the rivalry?
Yeah, some interesting anecdotes. So I arrived at Collingwood at the end of '93 to play in the '94 season. I got interviewed in the lead up to round one, and we were playing Fitzroy at Vic Park in round one, and we were playing Carlton at the MCG in round two. And in the interview, I said something about, "I can't wait to play Carlton at the MCG." So Lee Matthews pulled me aside and said, and that was pretty much the headline, that went in the Herald Sun, and he pulled me aside and said, that's not acceptable. It's not respectful of your next opponent. You shouldn't have your head in round 2. You should have your head in round 1. I hadn't even played a game for Collingwood at this point. And he was spot on. And this is what coaches, parents, mentors, managers, leaders need to do, is to just hold the mirror up to their people so that they can learn and develop and be better, and contribute more. So yeah, he was great. And so I was talking about round 2 against Carlton before I'd even played my first game for Collingwood. I got tagged in that first game, and he got 18 touches. Tom Kavanagh was a young tagger at the time, and it was a tough day. We won, and I got through. And then I was able to think about round 2 against Carlton, which was the day that Mickey McGuan took the 7 bounces and kicked the goal out of the centre bounce. We won that day, and it was everything that I thought it would be.
It's a very interesting situation we're in. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you now.
Because I got to talk about the good Collingwood ones. You don't want to hear that. I played my 200th against Carlton, and that was a good one. And not many Carlton supporters want to remember that. But that was a good night for me. I never played a final against Carlton in my time. I never coached a final against Carlton in my time. So since being at the Collingwood Footy Club in '94.
Well, I mean, from my side, before actually getting to know you, I just had you as, it's quite fascinating because growing up, players sort of morph into two. You have the human, the real person, and then you have this like fictitious character. And I'm sure I've hurled some cussing words at you over the boundary line in my time. So it's good to unite and actually understand the human element to you. And I think that's the other important part of this is, it is a documentation of, until the Blues win their next premiership and all of that. But there is also an element of trying to educate and trying to understand the balance between, it's just a game, which it's not just a game in some respects for us. But there are also human beings behind these characters that we support, Yeah.
I think humanizing the people we put on a pedestal is really hard to do, because one of the reasons you put them on a pedestal is because you see them as more than human. So it's the stereotype that occurs, and it makes it simple for us. We stereotype everything in our lives. It just makes it more consumable. It makes it easier. We don't have to think every time about, do I like this or do I not like it? You make a decision, and then it's like an internet cookie. You just don't even have to worry about it. It disappears, and you just believe that to be true for the rest of your life, for the rest of your time. And it becomes part of the things that are irrefutable and concrete. But the reality is that people change as well. Organisations change. So to characterise someone now and then think that they're going to be the same thing in 5 years or 10 years' time is, we all know that would be wrong to do, but we all do it. So the rivalry between Carlton and Collingwood has been age old, and I've read a little bit about it, and I've experienced a lot about it. But I'm thankful that we actually have each other, because without each other, you wouldn't have the rivalry. And that gratitude sort of comes in terms of what the competition is. I never really had any great angst towards Carlton. I never felt like I wanted to win any game more than any other. I just wanted to win every game I played. So, but I do understand, over time, before you and I were even here, this started, and it still permeates. And I've had people ask me for tickets for this week. I've gone to my 3 or 4 sources, and they're gone. So it's a big game. It's as big a Carlton Collingwood game as there's been for decades. So it's good. We should embrace it and enjoy it. And there's going to be half of us are going to be happy, and the other half aren't. That's going to be a short-term thing, because it'll come around again.
Exactly right. So going into Sunday, what are your observations of both sides? I mean, they both had. I think the Pies have been phenomenal this year. The Blues, we've started to put some things in place. It seems start to have a bit of an identity. What's your observation of what goes down on Sunday?
Yeah, I was really surprised by Carlton, what they were able to put together. I'm just having a look at the stats from last week. Well, I'll go to Collingwood first. Like I say, Collingwood have been smashed in contested ball for the last 6 weeks in a row. But they've been able to win, because they're really efficient in offense and they're defending really well. So transition-wise, they're as good a team in the competition at balancing their offense and defense. But they've given themselves an uphill battle for the last 6 weeks by losing contested, lost to Sydney by 29. And that adds to losing to Melbourne by 22 and losing to Essendon before that by 15. And it's nearly minus 100 over the last 6 weeks, which is like any double figure result in that contest or in that KPI is pretty significant. Carlton have been the best contested ball side for a long time this year, but probably haven't been able to nail that quite as much. So Carlton have got their chances, and they've got their key areas that will worry Collingwood, but they need to be more efficient going forward. I think fundamentally you need your forwards to win contests, because if they don't, your defenders haven't been winning quite as many contests. So it's going to be contests in front and behind the ball, and you need to win stoppage. And I think you'll get the edge on contested ball the way the numbers have gone, and it's just a matter of what you do with it when you go forward. So it's not run and one. I don't really care about personnel. It'll be who executes their plan best. And despite Collingwood's run and where you find yourself as a club, I think it's going to be a ripping game.
The atmosphere is it's just salivating, really. I think this is what we watch the footy for moments like this, games like this.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of games where it's just 4 points in the end, but obviously this is a round 23 game. You get a chance to qualify for finals, and it sort of it seems to cap the short-term validation of the improvement in the team and in the club, which is evident, and it's there regardless of the result in round 23, as many have said. But at the same time, it's a shame to come all this way and not cap it off. So there'll be disappointment if you don't, but it would be just reward for a really strong season. And you flip across to Collingwood, and they deserve to be top four with the way that they've battled and fought, and the way that they've come together as a group. The energy they've shown, whether they've won or lost, they have won a lot. They've they just probably deserve to finish top four, but you don't always get what you deserve, and you need to earn it. So whether it's Carlton or Collingwood this weekend, they will have earned whatever they get. And sometimes you have two teams that deserve it with the way they go about it, but you need to do more than deserve it.
Very true. Well, listen, Bucks, I've learnt that time is the most valuable asset that one can have. So I appreciate you giving up some of yours to come and have a chat with me and have a chat with us in the audience. Wish you all the best with everything that goes on in your world, and can't wait, mate. Next week, the Blue Baggers in the finals. Can't wait to talk about it.
Well, you know what? I mean, I'd love to see it. I would really love to see Carlton there, and Collingwood will be there. I thought about 5 weeks ago, what's going to happen? We're going to double up. We're going to get round 23, and then Carlton and Collingwood are going to play each other again in the first week of finals. And I still think there's a possibility that can happen. But it would require Carlton winning, I think. And there'd be a few other results that need to go the way. But I think Bossie's done a great job. I think there's plenty of players that have probably had career best first 2/3 of the season. And it's just a matter of finding that mojo again for you guys, but it's not going to be easy. The Pies boys are up and running, and but yeah, I'll be in the Fox studios, and I'll be top and tailing the game. I'll be able to sit down and watch it, and then talk about it sort of through the breaks. And I'm unlike the previous 30 years. I mean, I've got a leaning towards Collingwood because of my relationships in there. I want to see the boys do really well. But outside of that, I don't have a lot of skin in the game, so I can sit back and enjoy the spectacle like you guys. And I think it'll prove to be everything that it promises to be.
I think so too. I look forward to it. Bucks, thanks once again, mate.
All the best, mate. Have a good one.